two towering legends of the Wild West. Clint Walker, the soft-spoken giant, and James Arness, the unshakable Marshall Dillon. But behind the cowboy charm and Hollywood smiles there was tension. Deep tension. For decades, whispers filled studio backlots and fan circles. Why did Clint Walker really despise James Arness? Was it jealousy, betrayal, or something more personal? This video will give you the answer. Before we continue, we have a quick question for you. Do you think real rivalries make great actors even better? Comment 1 for yes, 0 for no. We're reading them all. And now, let's dive right in. A complex relationship. Clint Walker and James Arness were towering figures both literally and figuratively in the golden age of Western television. With their granite-chiseled features, baritone voices, and commanding physical stature, each man embodied a different kind of American hero, etched into the cultural consciousness of millions of viewers during the 1950s and 1960s. Walker, who brought the stoic Cheyenne Bodie to life on Cheyenne, and Arness, forever remembered as the steadfast Marshal Matt Dillon on Gunsmoke, represented the archetypal frontier lawmen of post-war America. Yet, behind the cameras, away from the dusty saloons and open plains of the small screen, there was an undercurrent of tension between these two icons. One rooted not in personal animosity, but in professional rivalry and a sense of injustice that festered over the years. At 6 feet 6 inches tall, Clint Walker was almost mythic in stature, with the physique of a lumberjack and a voice that rumbled like distant thunder. Walker took immense pride in doing his own stunts and portraying his characters with an authenticity that blurred the lines between actor and role. His breakthrough in Cheyenne was a major cultural moment. He was the first cowboy hero to anchor an hour-long television drama, and audiences quickly fell in love with his blend of physical power and quiet dignity. Yet, as much as he relished the success, he couldn't help but feel overshadowed. Standing just an inch shorter at 6 feet 5, James Arness was no less iconic. Cast as the soft-spoken but unyielding Marshall Dillon, Arness became the face of Gunsmoke for 20 years, an almost unheard-of tenure in television. His character became synonymous with stability, justice, and unshakable moral authority. Arness, a World War II veteran wounded at Anzio, brought his own quiet strength and inner gravitas to the role, winning the respect of peers and an enduring place in American pop culture. Yet for Clint Walker, Arness's long-running success was a bitter pill. Despite Cheyenne being one of the most watched shows in its early seasons, it was ultimately Gunsmoke that dominated the Western genre and defined its golden age. Arness became the name that generations associated with TV westerns, while Walker, despite his pioneering role, saw his contributions increasingly eclipsed. Sources close to Walker suggest that the resentment wasn't born from a single moment of betrayal or slight, but rather a pattern, decisions made behind studio doors, press coverage that consistently highlighted Arness's star power, and a sense that he was always walking in the shadow of someone who, in his view, didn't do more but simply had better support from the network brass. Walker was known to be deeply independent. He had well-publicized conflicts with Warner Brothers, the studio behind Cheyenne, over issues of creative control and contract disputes. He even walked away from the show briefly due to disagreements about compensation and artistic direction. While Arness had his own share of struggles, he maintained a more diplomatic relationship with CBS and was often seen as the safer, more cooperative star. This contrast in temperament may have further fueled Walker's belief that Arness's success was due more to politics than talent. Privately, Walker was also said to have felt boxed in by Hollywood's narrow vision. Despite his physique, he had aspirations beyond the genre that made him famous. He wanted to branch out to play more complex roles, to be seen as something more than just the quiet, brawny cowboy. In the competitive world of mid-20th century television westerns, every edge mattered, and for Clint Walker, one of the lingering sources of frustration was the belief that James Arness had benefited from a career path paved with privilege and high-powered endorsements. While both men would go on to become household names, industry insiders often whispered that the tension between them stemmed as much from the circumstances of their respective rises to fame as from any direct personal slight. The most notable point of contention was the way James Arness landed his defining role on Gunsmoke. In a move that would become legend in Hollywood circles, John Wayne, then at the very height of his stardom, was originally approached by CBS to star as U.S. Marshal Matt Dillon. Wayne turned the role down, but not without leaving his mark. He personally recommended Arness, a fellow rugged screen actor and friend, for the part. That singular endorsement opened doors that most actors could only dream of. Wayne even filmed a now iconic introduction for the show's premiere, telling viewers that Arness was the man to watch. It was a king's blessing, and it all but guaranteed Arness a prominent place in television history. For Clint Walker, who had taken a much more arduous path to recognition, this backstory may have been a bitter pill to swallow. Before Cheyenne made him a star, Walker had paid his dues in a series of physically demanding, unglamorous jobs, working as a sheet metal worker, a bouncer, a riverboat deckhand, and even a doorman at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. He also served in the Merchant Marine during World War II. There was no patron or cinematic godfather smoothing his way. Walker had to earn every inch of his screen presence through grit work ethic and a relentless pursuit of opportunity. Cheyenne, when it debuted in 1955, was a groundbreaking show. It was the first hour-long Western television series, and Walker became an overnight sensation. Still, he often felt that the series and his contributions were underappreciated when compared to the longer-lasting and more heavily promoted Gunsmoke. While Arness had the benefit of a 20-year run and continuous support from CBS, Cheyenne lasted 8 seasons, and endured rocky relations with Warner Brothers, the studio behind it. Walker even walked away from the show temporarily over contractual disputes, something he later described as one of the hardest decisions of his career. Adding to the tension were long-circulating rumors that the two actors had experienced personal friction at various industry events. Though both men were known for their discipline and professionalism on set, they projected very different energies off-camera. Walker, with his warm smile and humble origins, was often described as personable, grounded, and affable. Fans and colleagues alike found him approachable, and he was known to engage with crew members and fans alike with genuine warmth. By contrast, Arness, though deeply respected, was often perceived as more reserved, even standoffish. His war wounds, personal tragedies, and an intensely private nature gave him an aura of aloofness that some mistook for arrogance. To Walker, this difference in temperament may have read as condescension. Friends of Walker have hinted that he felt Arness looked down on him, perhaps viewing him as less of a serious actor and more of a physical typecast, a broad-shouldered cowboy better known for his physique than his depth. What perhaps stung most for Walker was the implication that Arness's success had been handed to him while he himself had to fight tooth and nail for every role, every contract negotiation, and every inch of recognition. In an industry that thrived on image and illusion, Walker's sense of authenticity, his pride in his working-class roots, clashed with what he saw as Hollywood's tendency to reward connections over character. Of course, neither man ever publicly acknowledged any rivalry or animosity. Arness remained famously tight-lipped about his personal life and professional opinions, and Walker, though more candid, was careful not to speak ill of his peers in the press. But among those who worked closely with them, the undercurrent was real two titans of the same genre with similar talents and towering statures walking parallel paths, one of them feeling constantly in the other's shadow. In retrospect, the tension between Walker and Arness offers a poignant glimpse into the pressures of stardom in a bygone era. Beneath the cowboy hats and stoic expressions were men shaped by war ambition and the relentless scrutiny of a public that often confused their characters for their true selves. Perhaps the most enduring source of tension between Clint Walker and James Arness was rooted not in a single event, but in the stark difference in how their careers ultimately unfolded, especially in terms of longevity and legacy. While Cheyenne was undeniably groundbreaking, ushering in a new era as the first hour-long Western television series, it was ultimately short-lived in comparison to the towering institution that was Gunsmoke. Airing from 1955 to 1975, Gunsmoke became not just a hit series but a cultural mainstay, and James Arness in his role as Marshal Matt Dillon became synonymous with the very image of frontier justice in American households. By contrast, Cheyenne ran for 8 seasons from 1955 to 1963, a respectable duration by television standards, but modest next to Gunsmoke's 20-year reign. What's more, Walker's time on the show was marred by behind-the-scenes conflict. In 1958, he famously walked off the set and refused to return until Warner Brothers renegotiated his contract, a bold move in an era when studios still held near total control over their television stars. While Walker's stand was principled, it came at a cost. His absence disrupted the show's momentum, and some industry insiders believe it stalled what could have been a more enduring primetime career. To Walker, Arness's steadfast tenure on Gunsmoke, a series that never missed a season and remained one of CBS's most bankable properties, likely represented the kind of stable, uninterrupted success he had once envisioned for himself. The contrast was hard to ignore. While Arness was enjoying one of the longest uninterrupted runs in the history of network television, Walker was navigating a choppier path marked by disputes, missed opportunities, and roles that never quite matched the iconic stature of Cheyenne Bodie. This disparity no doubt fueled a sense of professional envy, if not outright resentment. Adding salt to the wound was the continual comparison between the two actors. Both were tall, imposing men with deep voices and stoic screen personas. Both were veterans of the Western genre at a time when it dominated American entertainment, and both were admired by legions of fans. Yet, only one of them, Arness, had the benefit of a seemingly charmed professional trajectory helped along not only by John Wayne's powerful endorsement, but by the unwavering backing of the CBS network and a character that was written to grow and evolve over 2 decades. In Walker's eyes, this may have symbolized not just Arness's good fortune, but Hollywood's tendency to reward compliance over confrontation, loyalty to the system over fighting for fairness. Despite the simmering rivalry, Clint Walker remained publicly gracious when speaking about Arness, at least in the press. He never launched any public attacks or overt criticism, but those who were close to Walker over the years suggest a different, more candid perspective in private. According to some former colleagues and friends, Walker harbored little admiration for the Gunsmoke star. Whether that sentiment stemmed purely from professional jealousy or whether it was also shaped by personality clashes and differing values is a matter of speculation. Walker, who prided himself on his humble beginnings and rugged individualism, may have seen Arness as emblematic of a Hollywood system that privileged connections and polish over raw grit. Moreover, the two men were fundamentally different in how they related to those around them. Walker was known to be warm and affable off-camera, someone who never forgot his working-class roots. Arness, while not unfriendly, was more guarded and distant, shaped perhaps by his experiences in World War II, where he sustained serious injuries during the Anzio landings, and by his innate desire for privacy. This emotional distance may have made a natural friendship between the two nearly impossible. In the end, both Clint Walker and James Arness made lasting contributions to the Western genre. They helped shape television history and created enduring characters that would inspire generations of fans. But behind the iconic hats and spurs lay a complicated human dynamic, one defined by respect rivalry and the quiet pain of roads not taken. Though they were often considered brothers in arms on America's frontier of the small screen, the reality between them may have been far more fractured. Their story, quietly unfolding behind the scenes, remains one of the more fascinating and unresolved chapters in the legacy of classic television westerns. But here's the twist. In later interviews, Clint never fully trashed Arness. He once said, "I didn't like him, but I respected the man's work ethic." Clint Walker. Despite the bitterness, the Cowboy Code held strong rivalry, yes, but grudging respect, too. If you love uncovering the untold stories behind Hollywood's toughest legends, hit subscribe now. We dig deeper than the tabloids, and we're just getting started. Journey to Fame. Clint Walker, born Norman, Eugene. Walker, on May 30th, 1927, in the working-class town of Hartford, Illinois, would one day come to embody the stoic, rugged hero of the American West. But long before he became a towering figure on television screens, Walker lived a life rooted in grit, struggle, and quiet resilience. Raised during the unforgiving years of the Great Depression, Young Norman grew up in a modest household where hard work wasn't just expected, it was a way of life. His mother, Gladys Holden A. Schwanda, was of Czech descent and brought a deep sense of family and fortitude to their home. His father, Paul Arnold Walker, worked long hours in the local oil refinery laboring to provide for his family as the economy crumbled around them. The Walkers didn't have much, but what they lacked in material wealth they made up for with determination and an unspoken strength that would later define Clint both on and off the screen. Even as a boy, Norman stood apart. Tall for his age and strong from physical labor, he spent much of his time exploring the outdoors, developing an early bond with nature that would later give authenticity to his Western roles. But it wasn't just his size that marked him, it was a kind of internal quietness, a deep steadiness that people noticed even before he had a stage or a screen to perform on. He wasn't loud or flashy. He was dependable, grounded, and true. With the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, Norman left high school early to help support his family. He took on a series of tough physical jobs working on riverboats in factories and wherever else he could earn a dollar. These weren't glamorous paths, but they built the man he would become, someone who never shied away from hard work, who knew what it meant to struggle and persevere. At just 17, with World War II raging overseas, Norman enlisted in the United States Merchant Marine. It was a decision driven not by glory, but by duty, a quiet need to serve, to be part of something bigger. The experience transformed him. Life on the sea was harsh and uncertain, but it gave him discipline, a broader view of the world, and the kind of mental and emotional toughness that no acting school could teach. After the war, Norman drifted between jobs trying to find his place in a country that was rebuilding itself. He worked as a doorman, a sheet metal worker, and even an undercover private investigator, roles that each in their own way added layers to the man he was becoming. But his enormous frame, 6 feet 6 inches tall, his sculpted features, and his resonant baritone voice made him impossible to overlook. He had the kind of presence that could silence a room even when he said nothing at all. Eventually, he made his way to Las Vegas, where he took a job as a security officer at the Sands Hotel. The city was a crossroads for celebrities, producers, and showbiz legends. It was here in this glittering desert town that fate intervened. A talent scout noticed the quiet giant and saw in him what millions would later see the perfect embodiment of the strong, silent Western hero. With encouragement from friends and newfound contacts, Norman moved to Los Angeles and adopted the stage name Clint Walker. Though he had no formal acting training, his natural charisma and stoic charm opened doors. He landed a few small roles, including an uncredited appearance in Cecil B. DeMille's epic The Ten Commandments, where he played a Sardinian captain. It wasn't a starring role, but it was enough to get him noticed. Then came the call that would change his life forever. Warner Brothers cast him in the lead role of Cheyenne, the first hour-long Western series on television. As Cheyenne Bodie Walker brought a new kind of masculinity to the screen, strong but gentle, fearless but principled. He wasn't just playing a cowboy. He was bringing to life the very values he had lived: honor, humility, and quiet strength. His career would be defined by the role, and he would have firmly established himself as a legendary character in the history of Western television. Walker's depiction of the austere yet captivating vagabond Cheyenne Bodie captivated the hearts of fans all throughout the United States. Cheyenne was the first Western series to be broadcast on television for an hour. Not only was Walker's dominating screen presence a contributing factor in the show's popularity, but the show's compelling narrative and action-packed moments were also considered important factors. The traits that he possessed as a character, which included being a man of few words but steadfast integrity, were attributes that struck a chord with viewers on a profound level. Walker established himself as one of the most known faces in the Western genre during the course of the show's original run. The fact that he possessed a blend of physical capability, soft charm, and quiet passion made him a fan favorite. However, Walker ran into contractual disagreements with Warner Brothers, which resulted in his temporarily leaving the series. This was despite the fact that the program was extremely successful. Because of this break from Cheyenne, he was able to investigate options in the film industry. Walker switched into cinema after receiving noteworthy parts in a succession of westerns and action-packed adventures. He did this in order to capitalize on his popularity on television. Fort Dobbs, which was released in 1958, Yellowstone Kelly, which was released in 1959, and Gold of the Seven Saints, which was released in 1961, were instances in which he demonstrated his capacity to portray gruff heroes with a fascinating blend of toughness and tenderness. Additionally, Walker stepped away from the traditional Western genre by acting in the military drama None But the Brave, which was directed by Frank Sinatra, as well as the famous survival film The Night of the Grizzly, as an actor. He played Samson Posey, a mild-mannered but physically imposing inmate who was recruited for a deadly World War II mission in the film The Dirty Dozen, which was released in 1967. This portrayal is considered to be inarguably one of his most renowned film performances. In spite of these achievements, Walker had a strong connection to the Western genre throughout his whole career. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, he continued to create television movies and guest appearances in Westerns, which helped to consolidate his image as one of the most popular personalities in the Western genre. During the year 1971, Walker was involved in a terrifying near-death event that only served to further solidify his legendary position. During his skiing trip at Mammoth Mountain, California, he experienced a fall and was therefore impaled by a ski pole, which caused his heart to be punctured. It is a miracle that he made it through the ordeal alive, and he proceeded to have emergency surgery and recover completely. Fans were awestruck by his tenacity and miraculous recovery, which further solidified his reputation as an unbeatable hero both on and off the screen. In the later years of his career, Walker continued to show his appreciation for his Western heritage by providing his voice to animated projects such as Small Soldiers and by appearing in public at Western gatherings. Although he withdrew from performing, his legacy has persisted as Cheyenne and the many films he directed continue to provide entertainment for successive generations of spectators. Life and marriages. During the course of his life, Clint Walker was married 3 times, and each of these marriages lasted for around 20 years. Verna Garver was his first wife, and they tied the knot in 1948, way back when he was just beginning his career in the entertainment industry. Before he became famous, Walker was still in the process of establishing himself in the entertainment world. He had been doing a variety of professions up until that point. A daughter called Valerie was born to them in 1950, making her the only child they ever had together as a result of their marriage. As a result of her efforts, Valerie Walker would go on to become one of the first female airline pilots, therefore breaking barriers in a profession that was traditionally controlled by men. Within the aviation profession, she garnered respect and appreciation for her amazing talent and dedication, which earned her widespread acclaim. In spite of this, Walker and Garver's marriage was eventually terminated in 1968 after they had been together for a total of 20 years. This was the case in spite of the fact that they had experienced the happiness that comes with being a father throughout the early years of their relationship. They have made the decision to keep the reasons for their divorce a secret. Nonetheless, it is probable that the demands of celebrity and the responsibilities of a work played an influence in their decision to divorce. This is similar to the situation that occurs in many marriages in Hollywood. Following the collapse of his first marriage, Walker went through a period of time during which he was single. It was not until he eventually discovered love again that he was able to find a partner. The year 1974 was the year that he tied the knot with Giselle Hennessy, a woman who brought him a greater sense of joy and companionship over the course of his life narrative. The two of them were together for 20 years, and their relationship was marked by a strong affection and loyalty to one another. They remained together throughout their whole partnership. The fact that Hennessy ended up passing away unexpectedly in 1994, on the other hand, brought up an abrupt stop to their combined life. Walker, who had found comfort and safety in their marriage, was undoubtedly faced with a significant setback as a result of the death. In the years that followed her passing, he most certainly experienced a great deal of sadness as he attempted to readjust to life without his cherished wife. In spite of this tragedy, Walker was able to find love again and was married to Susan Cavallari in the year 1997. His marriage to her would be his last union, and it would last until the day he passed away. At the time when Walker was entering his latter years, Cavallari became a reliable partner who provided him with love and support. Both of them worked together to establish a life in Grass Valley, California, where Walker was able to have a more peaceful living away from the public eye. The fact that they made it through more than 20 years of marriage is evidence of the enduring strength of their connection. Over and beyond his private life, Walker was well known for the distinctive eating habits he possessed. His diet consisted of chicken and fish, mainly salmon, but he did not consume any red meat. He considered himself to be a pessimist, which means that he did not consume any red meat. There is a possibility that this decision was impacted by personal opinions about diet or worries over health. Walker's eating habits indicated a devotion to well-being and longevity during an age in which many celebrities advocated for lives that were health-conscious. Unlike the usual image of a tough cowboy actor who may be expected to consume enormous quantities of steak and red meat, he did not consume beef. This put him apart from the stereotype. The method that Walker took to eating, on the other hand, placed an emphasis on maintaining a balance which most certainly contributed to his general health and remarkable life. Additionally, Walker was politically active and made it clear that he supported conservative principles in public pronouncements. Barry Goldwater, a Republican senator from Arizona who was renowned for his extremely conservative ideas, received his support from him during the presidential election that took place in the United States in 1964. Goldwater's campaign placed a heavy emphasis on limited government individual liberties and a strong national defense, all of which are principles that are likely to have connected with Walker with his own personal values. Walker may have been lured to Goldwater's notion of rugged American individualism because he was a guy who depicted characters on screen who were strong, independent, and self-reliant. During a period in which the entertainment business was frequently linked with more liberal points of view, his endorsement placed him among the many Hollywood individuals who were politically active. He aligned himself with the conservative movement. Dramatic events. One of the most dramatic events that occurred in Walker's life was when he was engaged in a skiing accident at Mammoth Mountain in California in the month of May in 1971. It was so near to being fatal for him to be involved in the collision. This particular journey came perilously close to claiming Walker's life despite the fact that he was an experienced outdoorsman who was no stranger to overcoming physical hurdles. Walker was no stranger to overcoming physical obstacles. During the time that Walker was attempting to handle the rugged and unpredictable terrain of the ski slopes, he abruptly lost control of his vehicle and began tumbling down the mountain in a reckless manner. Because of the accident, he had a severe and traumatic injury in which his ski pole pierced through his chest and all the way to his heart. This damage was the result of the accident. When he got at the hospital, his condition was so serious that a medical specialist pronounced him dead. He had passed away. On the other hand, in a turn of events that can only be described as miraculous, a physician noticed some feeble signs of life and refused to give up on him. This was a remarkable turn of events. In order to heal Walker's damaged heart, the doctors had to execute a treatment that was both delicate and difficult. To ensure that Walker had the greatest possible care, he was rushed into an emergency operation. It was astonishing that he was able to survive, and it was contrary to the forecasts made by all of the medical authorities. And what was even more remarkable was how quickly he recovered. It took him only 2 months after the accident to get back to work, which is a testament to his tremendous tenacity and strength. Walker's image as a real-life incarnation of the strong and lasting characters he depicted on screen was cemented as a result of this occurrence, which became one of the most incredible survival tales in the history of Hollywood. Despite the fact that Walker continued to live a long and fruitful life, his health began to decline as he approached his later years. This was the case despite the fact that he continued to live a long life. His death occurred on May 21, 2018, at the age of 90, and it took place in Grass Valley, which is located in the state of California. Congestive heart failure was the condition that he had been experiencing. When this well-known individual passed away, it signified the end of a life that was filled with remarkable achievements, personal triumphs, and performances that would be remembered for all of time without exception. Those who succeeded him following his death included his daughter Valerie, his third wife Susan Cavallari, and other members of his immediate family, including a grandson and a half-sister. His daughter Valerie was also one of the people who replaced him. Lucille Westbrook, who was his identical twin sister, had really passed away in the year 2000, which means that she had passed away before to his own passing. Even after he has passed away, the memory of Walker as a Hollywood cowboy action star and real-life hero continues to live on in the hearts of those who were devoted to him. Because of his remarkable personal perseverance and the contributions he made to the film and television industries, he will be remembered for all time as one of the most renowned and enduring figures in the history of Hollywood. His legacy will go on forever. So, now that you know the truth, was Clint Walker justified in his hatred? Or was it just two icons caught in the crossfire of ego and era? Whose legacy do you admire more, Walker or Arness? Drop their name in the comments and tell us why. Don't forget to like the video if you love classic Hollywood drama. Hit subscribe for more behind-the-scenes showdowns, and share this with someone who still loves a good Western.